are live.
Good morning everybody, and welcome to the sunrise safari on this very, very chilly winter's day. It's 9 degrees Celsius, 49 degrees Fahrenheit, and as far as we're concerned, that is Baltically, Antarctically freezing. We've been out for the last 5 minutes feeling very sorry for ourselves. My name is James Hendry. On camera today we have David. David has got some spectacular gloves on his face, at least on his hands, and a large balaclava around his head, owing to the cold. On the other vehicle, Byron Sarau is driving around with Brian, who will have at least 47 jackets on today, and probably an ice-coloured thumb this morning. Now, you're on a live safari, if you're wondering who this fellow is blethering to you and from where in the world he's doing it. We're in the middle of the Kruger National Park, iconic wildlife area, and we're on a live safari for the next 3 hours, and you're most welcome on the back of what is sometimes termed the largest safari vehicle in the world, which I suppose is quite a good sort of symbol for what we are. We're going to try and find a leopard this morning. There was one calling around here today, early this morning, just as the sort of light, the dawn turned a little bit grey. Please talk to us during the course of the next 3 hours. Hashtag Safari Live, questions at WildEarthTV. Your questions and comments, especially if they're amusing, will help us to have a bit of a giggle and warm up, because it really does feel much colder than 9 degrees out here. Right, so the leopard was calling down there. Let's ease down the road and see if we can find his tracks on the road. We might just find him walking straight towards us, which would be a wonderful bonus. Here we go. Like I say, you're in the Kruger in northeastern South Africa, and we're on a little place called Djuma, which is a piece of the Sabi Sand Game Reserve, which is a collection of privately owned farms here on the western fringes of the greater Kruger National Park. So between us and the Mozambican border, about 60 kilometers of wildlife land, the park extends into Mozambique to the east and north into Zimbabwe. And together they make up 3.5 million hectares of land, or 8.5 million acres. I'm just going to look at something here that looks... Just check the road and see if there are any tracks here going down. Roads, of course, often major arterial routes for territory marking cats, like leopards or lions. They often use roads or very obvious game paths, quite unlike their more timid counterparts, the cheetah, which will normally cross a road and just sort of skulk through the bush, hoping to be avoided or hoping to avoid. Let's go down this way. We might be very lucky. Go ahead, Lex. I'm just going to talk on the radio to Lex quickly. He's the one who heard the leopard. Lex, nothing yet. I'm just turned on to Central from Mvubu Road. All right, let's head across to Byron, get an update from him and his plans for the morning. I'll keep you posted what happens here.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome again to Safari Live. My name is Byron, and with me on camera I've got Brian and the Thumb. Hi, Brian. Oh, and it is a chilly morning this morning. Luckily I've got my gloves, beanie, so I should be okay, and scarf. Brian is well covered behind me. Hope you all had a good evening, or wherever you are around the world, that you're having a great time. It's fantastic to have you live again with us this morning. Yesterday we had a really, really exciting afternoon, a lot of activity. So my plan for this morning is, yesterday afternoon we had a single lioness who we think is probably from the Nkuhuma pride. And on our way back, after we left her and after we left our viewers, we bumped into a male lion at the Buffelshoek Dam. He was calling, and I think possibly that's what caused that lioness to move away. I don't think she was too interested in meeting up with him. We are going to head back into that area and see if we don't have any luck in finding either the male or that lioness, and see if there has been any activity in that area from last night. while we are driving, constantly trying to check for tracks, see if there's any sign of wildlife that's been moving through the area. Hope all of you enjoyed our Facebook session last night, our live Facebook session. I thoroughly did. It was my first one. It was nice to sit with James and Brian, have a bit of banter around the camp and answer some of your questions. Hopefully we have another one before I leave in the next week. I'm sure James has given you the temperature this morning already. It's about 9 degrees. It feels a bit cooler, but I think that's with the wind chill factor that we experience on drive, which is quite cold, but it's not too bad. To be honest, I really enjoy this temperature. Winter for me in the bush is fantastic. Animals move around a little bit longer during the day because it's much cooler. They don't go and hide in the shade of trees. Just have a look here. So a question from Book Dealer. I'm assuming that came through via Twitter. And the Book Dealer would like me to try and find them a tower of giraffe. We will try our best. Let's see what you never know. Yeah, I actually haven't seen a giraffe since I've been here in the last 2 days. So it would be wonderful to see some giraffe around. We'll definitely have a look for any sign. See if they stick their heads out. Thank you again to everyone for the wonderful comments and all the support from all the viewers. It's fantastic to hear that you're all enjoying it. I'm really enjoying being with you. This is a very new concept for me, but it's amazing, and to be able to take so many viewers around the world on a live safari is incredible. While I'm moving along this boundary road and looking for any tracks with Brian, why don't you go and have a look what James has for you?
We will be stopping this morning at absolutely everything that has a heartbeat until the sun is warming my face and David's face, which is covered with a very sort of modern balaclava. And there are some impala. You can see that they are not too. And so we don't heat our rooms, we just put a blankie over ourselves. And if it's very cold at night, no, you know, even if it's very cold at night, a blanket and a duvet is perfectly sufficient. Unless you're David, in which case you have a very large portable air conditioning unit and the room pumped up to 85 degrees Fahrenheit. With a roommate hanging out of the window going... It is better than being cold, David. I agree with you. Probably sure what happened. Anyway, we're back now, and you've missed nothing. I'm hoping to show you a bit of the pinkening sky. It looks very pretty indeed, and I think we're probably in for one of those glorious low-felt winter days with deep blue skies and pleasant warmth during the middle of the day. Let us find a spot, David, where we might reveal the African sunrise, which is always so very marvellous, even when it is a little bit chilly. There it is, everyone. Kirsten, go again with that last transmission, please. There we are. Is that not very pretty indeed? Ah. And let's just have a listen for a little while. Very quiet dawn chorus today. One oriole to the left. You can hear the odd hornbill going, and they'll be sitting on the tops of the trees, hoping for the sun to pop up. They love to sit on the top of trees and catch the first rays. And down in the valley of the Great Mulwati calls the first crested francolin. Very, very pleasant sound, I must say. It's so peaceful. Perfect Saturday morning. Alright, Darby, let's drive gently along. No leopard tracks yet. We might be lucky. We might not. We never know what's going to be around the next corner, as the Safari Live cliche goes. But it really is very true. Alright, let's go back to Byron, get an update from him. He's sort of heading towards the north like that, and we'll catch up with you shortly.
Welcome back, everyone. So, Brian and I have been driving around looking for any sign of lions from that we had for yesterday afternoon. We had tracks of a single lioness, possibly that lioness we had at the Buffelshoek Dam last night. But they unfortunately have crossed our boundary and headed further north onto Buffelshoek. But I haven't seen any tracks of the males around. So there's a very good chance that they could still be in this area. We're having a good look, and we're heading towards Buffelshoek Dam now. It's still very, very cool, and it is still quite early. So often in the colder conditions, I've found in the past, predators, even though they are more active in the early mornings, they will go and lie down a little bit and wait for a little bit later in the morning and then start moving again. You know, they've probably been moving around quite a lot during the evening. You know, I often think we miss so much at night. And these animals do just what they want. They go wherever they like. And I think we don't really get to see all the behavior that we hear about or read about, because they do most of it in the middle of the evening. Janet made a comment earlier about all the beautiful colors, and I touched on it yesterday afternoon too, especially with that afternoon light. The colors in the bush at the moment are fantastic. And as Brian pans through and has a look, you can see beautiful yellows and oranges and greens. Excuse me. And that's what I love about doing this too, is we can always appreciate other things that are going on around, and not just the wildlife. So Andy and Julia from Los Angeles would like to know how long a regular safari lasts, and do guests actually stay on the vehicle for 3 hours like Safari Live? Andy and Julia, yes, there's no set time for a safari, but generally it's between 3 and 4 hours long. That, I would say, is an average time for a safari. Most places, though, it also all depends on what you're seeing and how the morning or afternoon is going. It could be a bit shorter, it could be a bit longer, but generally it's between 3 and 4 hours. And time flies while you're driving around through the bush. We would also do short little stops and get the guests out to stretch their legs a little bit. In the mornings we stop and do a tea or coffee break. You get a nice hot cup of coffee and a rusk or a biscuit, just something to keep you going until breakfast. I seem to have something in my throat this morning. Still no sign of any lion tracks, but we are getting closer to Buffelshoek Dam. This takes some getting used to, the driving and looking for tracks and looking for animals. I've done a lot of tracking in my time as a guide, but in a lot of places that I've worked at in the past, we drive with trackers, and a tracker and guide relationship is so important, and it makes it a lot easier for the guide. The guide is there to interpret the bush to the guests, and the tracker is there to help spot and then find tracks while you're driving. So it does make it much easier, but this is a new challenge, and it's fun and it's exciting. Back at Buffelshoek Dam. So last night this lioness walked up the road in that direction that we just came from, and the male came through and lay on the dam wall exactly where that lioness was laying just before. So he must have heard exactly where she was calling from and went and investigated to see if she was around. Let's just have a good look around here, see if there are any tracks. I wouldn't be surprised if he decided to follow her. Okay, so here are the lioness tracks from last night. The resident hippo is still there. So Shamsun has asked about the lioness which we saw last night, and whether or not I think she possibly headed to a den. It's a good question, Shamsun. I'm not too sure. I unfortunately don't know the pride dynamics here very well just yet. I was chatting a bit to James last night, and maybe you can ask James a little bit later too, but it does look like that female is potentially lactating. She did have quite large teats, so it did look like she was carrying a bit of milk, so it is a possibility. And for her to be alone like that is also a good sign that she may be either looking for a den or has in fact given birth and has hidden the cubs in a den site somewhere. And that would also explain why the other two lionesses, which I think are from the same pride, we bumped into them last night too on the way back to camp. But they were about, I would say, 2 or 3 kilometers from here as the crow flies further west. So it's interesting. So she's obviously moved off for a reason, but it's not to say that she wouldn't meet up with those lionesses again, especially when they're hunting. Will make it easier for her to get some food. She still has to eat, and then she will return back to the den site and feed those cubs and allow them to suckle. Oh, beautiful sunrise over the water. Oh, look at that. Doves calling in the background. Oh, wow, amazing. Beautiful African sunrise. So as you can see, we have a very, very difficult job. I could think of worse offices to be sitting in right now. Oh, fantastic. Really beautiful. And it also helps to sit and listen for a while in places like this. Maybe pick up on alarm calls or predators calling. Again, it's still nice and early, so you might still get quite a bit of activity from them. And nothing just yet. I think let's carry on going. Going to take this road behind us. That male that we had last night lay down here, and then I think he would have possibly got up and moved further down in this direction, a little bit further south. I only see tracks of that lioness at the moment, which we had that walked past us. I don't see tracks of the male coming through there. Maybe tracks of other lions here. And there's a track of a male, it looks like. Always difficult. You've got to really have a good look around and see what activity is happening, which direction they're going. While I have a look at these tracks, head over to James, get an update from him, and we'll see you shortly.
Righty, we did Hyena Road, which is where you last saw us. Now we're heading south down the Gowrie cut line, it's called. And we're just still trying to find tracks of the leopard that was calling this morning. Haven't found anything here. So what I'm going to do is just do one last squiz through this area, and then we're going to head towards the hyena den and see if we can't catch the little ones coming out to warm themselves in the early morning sun. That would be very nice indeed. We did see a couple of hornbills, predictably sitting on the top of a tree waiting for the first rays. And the first rays there, you'll see them catching my face now. Yeah, it's very nice. Not quite warm yet, but they'll get there. I think we're in for a delightful day. Hello, Faraya and Dr. Bob in New Jersey. You're interested in animals that might be sort of differently distributed during the winter and summer months. In mammals, no. Faraya and Dr. Bob, we don't really get a different distribution of mammals. They do cluster slightly differently, so the herds generally get a bit bigger. They'll move in more sort of conglomerated groups, so like yesterday evening we found I think there were probably about 30 zebra in one herd on Cheetah Plains. Buffalo herds generally get up to sort of 400 at this time of the year. Elephant herds also, from their little matriarchal groups, will get to those much larger agglomerations of up to 100 in this area. But in terms of actually different species, no. It's unlikely that we see different species around here according to the weather, because of the provision of artificial water. So there's no migration in and out of the area. Animals are generally sedentary and make do with what they can here. Obviously, though, when we talk about animals, we must include things like birds. And yes, we know that there are many migratory birds that disappear from here during our winter months. And they're either intra-African migrants, which means they go up north of the equator to sub-Saharan Africa. Otherwise, they're Palearctic migrants, which disappear all the way up into Europe and sometimes as far as Siberia and the Arctic, which I think is a remarkably long way to go to get a meal. Anyway, some of the birds have to do that. And then, of course, I mean, animals also must include all the invertebrates and all the insects and things which just don't occur in the winter time at all. And one of the most notable examples, of course, that quintessential sound of the summer from just about all over the world, that of the cicada. No cicadas around during the winter months at all. I was rather hoping there might be a leopard draped in this beautiful ebony tree here. Hello, hello NH native. I would love to know what the NH stands for. As we sit here complaining bitterly about the cold, and you can see the condensation coming out of my mouth as I brave the cold here. You want to know how long our winter season lasts? Not very long. May is just a beautiful month. June's coldish. July is coldish like this. after July it's warm again. So while the dry season lasts much longer, the dry season will last from sort of May to often the end of October, which is a long time, and the actual coldness only persists probably for 2 months, and it's not that cold at all. It's very pleasant in the middle of the day. I'm just going to turn the radio down slightly. And Shamsan, you were obviously watching yesterday afternoon when we stopped to look at a Melba finch, or also known as a green-winged pytilia, and a leopard walked straight past. So you say, why don't we just stop and look at a bush with a bird in it, and maybe a leopard will walk past? I think it's an excellent idea, especially if that bush happens to be in the sun. Oh, there's some lovely big earth-moving equipment. That's fun to see. These are about to be used to modify the Djuma Dam onto which the Djuma Dam cam looks. But unfortunately, one of their colleagues, the third member of their team, is now stricken on the Buffelshoek cut line. It's lost something, some piece of its deeply complicated mechanics, and so these chaps are having the weekend off. Morning, fellows. Very nice to see you. Yes, a little bit out of place, but you won't be here for long. Now, Lex thought he heard the leopard heading this way, and I've yet to see any further tracks. So let's go to the hyena den and let's see what we can find there. Just keep an eye on the Djuma Dam cam over the course of the morning. The leopard might pitch up there for a little bit of a, a morning coffee, if you like. Yeah, nice one from Brian there. Brian, you say, is there any chance that the leopard that Lex heard calling could be Sindile? Now, for those of you who don't know, Sindile is a 20-year-old male leopard who's just come back to the area after an extended period in rehab for rabies. He's fine. He is too young, Ryan. You're absolutely correct. You say, could he be calling? No, it's highly unlikely that a leopard of 2 years old is going to be calling. And if he is, he's going to get himself into trouble, because the dominant male of the area, who at the moment is Tingana, if he hears that leopard calling and sort of asserting himself and marking territory, then he'll definitely come and give him a hiding. So a leopard will only call if he is trying to assert himself, if he's trying to mark his territory. And for Sindile to be trying to lay out a territory at his current age would be A, suicidal, and B, very unlikely. He's simply not big enough. His body won't be telling him to do it yet, I don't think. Gosh, it is chillsome in these little dips. I don't know where this thing went. He may have just gone down to ground somewhere in that drainage line next to that big ebony tree that we were sitting next to. But otherwise, everything is out hiding. Let's see if we can make some success with the hyenas. I can see many hyena tracks going back towards their little home, which is not too far up the road from here. So with any luck, they'll all be frolicking about. What was that? Did you get that? Go to Brian. Okay. Apparently we're going to go back across to Byron for an update as we go through this rather difficult section. We'll see you at the hyena den.
James has been heading over to that hyena den quite regularly. I hope he has some more luck there and has those little cubs coming out. We're still having a look for some lion tracks. Had some male tracks at the Buffelshoek Dam. Try to follow them. It seems like they cut through a block south from the dam. Now we are just driving around to see if we get any sign of them coming out. Tracking is not always easy, and you really need to know what you're doing. It is a fine art. But what does help is if you drive sections of blocks, you drive around an area and then you can see, hopefully, you'll be able to see if the lions have crossed out of that area or if they are still in there if you don't have tracks coming out. It makes it a little bit easier. This is the exciting part, the looking for the animals, not knowing where they are or what's going to pop up. So Shamsun has asked us about whether or not, if you go to a safari lodge on safari as a guest, do they take you on drives out through the day and also on bushwalks and tracking? Yes, Shamsun, they do. Most places do it. The guides are all, well, hopefully when you start guiding, they go through a series of qualifications that they have to get. And once you have quite a bit of experience, you are able to walk guests in a Big Five area like we are in at the moment. Someone like Stefan, who does a lot of walking, is a good example. He's got all the right qualifications, and he is able to take guests on walks. I do the same. James can do it. So if we do guide guests at other lodges, then we definitely do bushwalks with them. It's a great way to get out, stretch the legs. You see and hear a lot of the stuff that you miss occasionally from the vehicle. Look at the smaller things. You never know. You can also bump into some of the bigger wildlife while on foot, which is very exciting. We have a question from Joburg to Kili, and the question is, if you cycle in in an area where there are lions, are they likely to attack you? I'm not sure if this is one of my friends back home that is sending me a question, because I think they are doing a cycle race from Johannesburg to Kilimanjaro for charity, but generally, you have to be very careful if you are cycling in a Big Five area, not just of lions, but of any animals. The one thing is that generally animals are more afraid of us than we are of them. But when you're on a bicycle, and if you do cycle in an area where there is wildlife, you've got to be very, very careful, because you can sneak up on them. They wouldn't necessarily hear you as much as they would if you were walking. You'd make far more noise walking than you do on a bicycle. It's unlikely that the lions would necessarily attack you. Again, they'd probably get a fright and most likely run off, but always have to be careful. And generally, if you are cycling in an area like this, you would have a guide with you that would be able to tell you exactly what to do if you come across any of those animals. Just need to wipe the screen quickly. Brian, how's it looking there?
It's so foggy.
Foggy, all this cold air this morning. How's the thumb this morning, Brian, handling the cold?
It's falling off, it's so cold.
So James has just got to the hyena den. Why don't you go and have a look what he has got there for you?
Unsurprisingly, a hyena at the hyena den, but quite surprisingly, only one hyena at the hyena den. No doubt her two little babies are just inside there. And yesterday we had the most wonderful sighting of the two little ones. Can't be more than 10 days old, I don't think, sitting inside, and they came out and they suckled and they played around a little bit before disappearing back inside. We also had one of what I think was the January babies knocking about. I don't know where the other one is. Don't know where the rest of the clan is. And the fact that they're not here, and the fact that those youngsters are not here, tells me that I'm just not convinced that this is actually where everyone's hanging out at the moment. I think there might be a third den possibly behind us in that drainage system between here and the one that's on Gallagher Shortcut. She's definitely low ranking. She's given birth here. There are one or two who come and see her. They spend a bit of time here and then they seem to duck off, because at the main den, remember where we had Madam and her babies, everyone centered there. The activity was always centered there. There was never a time when there was no one around. And so I'm not convinced that this is the main den yet. I think she's still lurking around here because her babies are a little bit young to introduce to the rest of the clan. I think it's going to be worth our while to sit here just for the next 5 minutes or so, see what happens, see if anything pops out. If it doesn't, we'll continue. But at the moment, no other prospects, so I think a good idea to just sit here for a while. Never a bad thing in the bush to sit and be quiet. Or not be quiet, but to sit and just wait. Something always walks past. And it's one of the reasons animals like this hyena, although she's sleeping now, will seldom sleep soundly. They'll always lift their heads up and look around. There's never anywhere that you can sit and not be noticed by something at some stage. Although she doesn't seem to be that panicked by life at the moment, does she, David? Not quite. So at the moment, we know that the clan consists of at least 16 adults or so, and we also know that there are 2 December babies, 2 from last year, 2 January babies from this year, a November baby from last year, and a couple of June babies, no, 1 June baby as well from last year. Now they would all, in theory, the June baby now moving with the clan, so wouldn't spend much time at the den, but the rest would absolutely still be centering on wherever the clan's central den is at the moment. Now we checked the one off Gallagher Shortcut the other day. There's definitely nothing going on there. So it's difficult to say what's going on. Hello, Erlene. It's a nice question from you. And I'm just thinking about how it actually happens. So you say, would a low-ranking female like this ever think about leaving the clan, perhaps, and going to start her own clan? I think that might happen with a high-ranking female. I don't think it would happen with a low-ranking female. I think it would be unlikely that she would have the gumption to go off and try and sort of dominate other hyenas. But a very high-ranking female, if it became obvious that there was a dearth of hyenas in a particular area, well, then she might settle off in another area. I think you'd find what would happen is, let's say, let's use for example that this clan of hyenas was decimated by something, right? So they disappeared. This territory became immediately empty. And the very large clan of hyenas that lives on Elephant Plains and occupies Arathusa, let's pretend then that there's an opportunity for them to spread. I think it's quite likely that one of the high-ranking females there might sort of go foraging, or one of the males might come foraging here, find that there was no one around, and they'd slowly spread into this area, and you'd find that once the territory got big enough, the clan would split. And one of the dominant females in that clan would take over as the matriarch of a new clan. I think that's probably how it would happen, far more than a low-ranking female like this going away. Simply because she doesn't have the self-confidence, I don't believe. Hello, Sandy. Nice one about whether they have anything to worry about. This hyena doesn't seem to have a worry in the world because they move in groups. Sandy, they are, I mean, the predator hierarchy here, the top 5 predators basically go in this order: lion, hyena, wild dog, leopard, cheetah. And this lions and spotted hyenas often are interchangeable depending on their numbers. And it's because they're big, and it's because they're in groups. So the bigger the hyena group, the more chance it has of sort of becoming the apex predator. And so they don't worry about a great deal. They absolutely worry about lions, and they worry about other hyenas. This hyena would worry about a big male leopard that came wandering through here if it was found on its own. She would worry about it, but not to the extent that she would feel the need to run away. She may well turn and challenge a leopard, because a leopard is on his own, so he's never going to take the chance. Even though he's much bigger than she is and he's stronger than she is, he's not going to take the chance of getting injured because he doesn't live in a group. And that passes on to the next part of your question. They always seem to be stealing food from everyone else, you say. They don't actually steal food from everyone else all the time. They do a huge amount of hunting, especially in East Africa. Not so much here. They do scavenge quite a lot here. Something's coming. It's another hyena. Wonderful. Here we go. Let's see who this is. Just off through there. This looks like the young hyena that's been lying out away from the den every time we've come in here. Let's see if they greet each other and how fondly they greet each other. There we go. Approaching very cautiously. Come on then, come and say hi. Don't be shy. Very nervous. Ooh. Yeah, that's fascinating. I don't know what precipitated that. And she's pushing home that attack. I'm just going to look with my binoculars and see if I can't tell who that is, and if I can't, what sex he or she is. Looks too big to be a male. But definitely not flavour of the month, and our mother is very unhappy to see him. Huh. That's very interesting. I couldn't begin to tell you what happened there. They're still round the corner, just out in the sun. And I don't know... I mean, nothing's going to come out of the den now. We might just try and sneak around the corner there and see what's going on. Let's try that. Shamsan, nice one from you also, about low-ranking hyenas and yearling hyenas and whether they'd pose a threat to new cubs. Shamsan, no, I think almost universally not. Although they're low-ranking, they're hyena. It's still a tightly knit group. The greatest danger, of course, to a hyena cub is a hyena cub sibling, who may well try and kill it at birth. And so that would be the greatest sort of danger to a young hyena cub. But that doesn't appear to have happened here. There still seem to be two of them, and I think they'll probably both survive now. And that's not unusual for a low-ranking female's cubs. June and November are on their own. They probably were born with siblings, so they may well have killed their siblings. Sorry, John, I missed your question. I was waffling on about the last question. I'll get it back from you. Oh, you say, would a low-ranking female's youngsters automatically become low-ranking? Yes, they do automatically become low-ranking. It's precisely what happens, John. The clan hierarchy is maintained very violently and very definitely. We're going to wait here. The hyenas are just up ahead. Looks like the mother wants to come back here. And just, sorry Dave, just look over there. It's a crested francolin about to go down into the hole where the little cubs are. That's where the little cubs are. So John, it is precisely what happens that a low-ranking female will inherit the status of their mother. Look, here they come. Here we go. Just looking at Dave's balaclava. Looks like a criminal, so she's a bit nervous. That's where her little babies are. And the other one is now coming down the right-hand side of the car, over there. And she's just, while we look at that one, I'm just going to narrate what's going the other one. She's just stuck her head into the den site. Maybe she'll call out the youngsters. Now, let's try and find out if this one coming past us is a male or a female. It's not unusual for males to come past and say hi at the den, even though they're all low ranking compared to the females. Now I can't tell. This looks like a male to me, maybe. But a youngster, maybe a young female. It is very difficult to tell. There's quite a whiff coming out of the place, isn't there? Thank you, Chris Rogue. You say that this is clan male number 15. Now, Chris Rogue and a few others have maintained a wonderful group on Facebook called the Hyenas of Djuma and Arathusa, and they have amazing... Sorry, I'm just listening to... Ooh. We've got tracks of Karula coming onto Vuyatela. That's good news. Alright, we'll head that way fairly soon. So this is apparently a male number 15 from Chris Rogue. Thank you very much for that, Chris Rogue. They've got wonderful pictures of all the hyenas and identifying spots. Also known as tsaka, which means happy, basically, or sort of. And you can identify them. Chris and the others identify them from the marks on their bodies. I think Chris, if I'm not mistaken, from the spots. The spots don't change, and so if you keep an eye out, you can tell what's going on. You can see how this male is much more low-ranking than the female. He's not prepared to take a chance with her. Lex, I'm going to head down that way as well. I'll come give you a hand. And here he comes again. Look, 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 look. Not happy to have him around. Now, I guess infanticide is a possibility. It's not impossible that there could be some form of infanticide where he might think about killing the cubs because she's low ranking. I think it's highly unlikely though, and you can see how she is so much larger than he is. You say, would she be, Marianne Boston, a nice one from you. Sorry, I'm just listening to the radio, what's going on with those Karula tracks. You say, would a low-ranking female leave the den to forage? She has to leave the den to forage. And her youngsters would remain safe inside on their little shelf inside the burrow there. She has to go off, and she has to go and forage on her own, and she will do so frequently. And you can see she's got a very full belly, so she's been successful over the last few evenings, I think. Alright, let's just see a little bit more what happens here, and then I think we're going to head down towards those Karula tracks and see if we aren't very lucky there. There, she's settling down again. The male is still there. I can still see him. Sorry, just cleaning there. Sandy, you're wondering what the hyena den looks like inside, and if it's large enough for any male hyenas or any adult hyenas. No, it's not. I don't know what it looks like inside. I was about to make some facetious answer about there being some sort of playpen and a PlayStation and a various other modern conveniences for young kids. No, it's very small inside. It's big enough for say a 4 or 5 or 6 month old hyena to go into, but behind that, I think it gets deeper every time they use it. Behind that, the little ones will dig a shelf for themselves to sit on, and so very small at the back of the den where the little ones are safe. Alright, let's go backwards. We'll just have one last look, and then we're going to head down towards the south and see if we can't... Oh, quickly, sorry, Dave, just look on that branch over there. Look at those wonderful crested francolins just sitting, enjoying the early morning light. There's one of them. It's like they're walking the plank. I think they're so great, those birds. If I had ever had a farm, I wouldn't mind having some francolins instead of some chickens. I wonder if they would if they'd produce eggs. I think you'd have to have a lot of francolins if you wanted the eggs. The male is right here. He's still lurking here. Unfortunately, we just ran over a very large tree and the male got a bit of a fright. And Bear, you say maybe this young male here is a youngster looking for his mother. I don't think he's that young, but he's certainly not. He's not old, and you can tell that from his condition. He's in good condition. He isn't beaten up. And any hyena, once they reach adult or full adulthood, or close to the end of their life, is going to have mangled ears and beaten up feet, because they do fight each other quite a lot. Ease around here. Sorry fella, I don't mean to give you a fright. And you can see how much more nervous they are than the females. Much more. They've got a lot more to be concerned about. And it's so interesting, you see them on their own and they're quite difficult to tell whether one's male or female or not. And then you see them with a female and you see how much smaller they are. He doesn't want us to be sandwiched between us and that rather nasty female. So although she's low ranking, you can see here how she is completely outranks any male. And you just see the colors brightening up so beautifully now. Alright everyone, I think we're going to leave the den now while the Mrs. Hyena goes popping down in there, snoozing. Her youngsters might come out a bit later. This male I think will probably find some shade eventually and lie down in that, but some sun initially. But while he does that, let's head down, I think, towards where Karula's tracks have crossed onto Djuma. We'd really like to see her again. So let's, while we do that, head across to Byron. I know he's heading towards quite an exciting sighting, and let's get an update from him.
So I'm glad you had some luck with hyena and with James at the hyena den. We've got an interesting sighting. So Brian and I were sitting around trying to work out where these lionesses and lions have gone, and we had tracks heading much further south. It sounds like somebody just found 2 lionesses that are feeding on something. We also had some impala alarm calling. We checked around, had a look in the area, but we didn't have any luck, no sign of anything around there. So what we're going to try to do is get into this area where we think those lionesses are and see what they are up to. Oh, we're just saying it's very, very chilly this morning. While we're driving around here, the temperature has dropped. As the sun has started to rise, the temperature dropped even further. So Anna Marie would like to ask, have I ever been surprised by a big cat approaching quite closely while I was on foot? Yes, Anna Marie, I have. Quite a few times. And most of the time it's when I've been tracking, looking for the animal, like a leopard or lion. I've walked into many, many big cats in my time as a guide. It's just one of those things. But you as long as you're aware and you're careful, you generally can back off without them getting too aggressive, and they generally calm down quite quickly again. But one occasion I had guests. We had stopped for a sundowner and we jumped off the vehicle. And as we were packing everything up, we were all standing around the front of the vehicle, and one of the guests said, "Oh, what is that over there?" And as I looked behind me, we had a big male leopard walking towards us down the road, which was so exciting and quite a big surprise. But it was purely, I think, a case of him just knowing that we were there. He was very comfortable with us, and he quickly got everybody around back onto the side of the vehicle, and he must have walked about 10 meters from us, walked right past. It was incredible. Getting closer to that area where we think these lions are. So exciting times ahead. You're going to have to help us keep an eye out. Don't want to miss anything. Oh, look what we have ahead. Giraffe. We had a question about giraffe this morning. Book Diva, here is a giraffe for you. You asked for it, and look what we have found. Let's just see. I only see the one. Oh, wonderful. Big male. Looks like quite an old male. Let's just see. Just keep an eye on it there. Let's follow it a little bit. Look at that. Again, you never know what you're going to bump into out here. Now we're looking for lions. We bumped into a giraffe. Oh, that is a big old male. Wonderful. Look at that. Very slow walk down the road. Now, some of you might be wondering, how did I know that is a male so quickly? Just from seeing it stick its head out and turn and walk onto the road. So, apart from the obvious, the male genitalia, if you don't see that, you can see it sometimes under the stomach of the male. But have a look at those horns, and if we get a little bit closer, right on top of the male's head. So they are known as ossicles or horns, and then you can actually see it very clearly. These horns of the male Do you see how bald they are on top? The horns are much thicker and completely bald on top. The females, their horns or ossicles are much thinner, and they've got little black tufts of hair that cover the entire horn right up to the top. And you can see that very, very easily if you do see a male and female giraffe, if you can just see the head. So it's quite easy to tell if it's male or female just by looking at that. Also, this is a very big giraffe. This is a nice old male. He does seem a little bit darker, and that tends to be either a genetic thing or with age. The older giraffe tend to become a little bit darker, but it can also be genetic or area specific. Some giraffe in certain areas might be a little bit lighter than others. We only have the southern giraffe in southern Africa, but up in Kenya, Tanzania, you get a lot more species of giraffe up there. Different species. And look at that. Look, you see he's missing a bit of his tail. That could be a number of things. But often what happens with giraffe is they get a lot of ticks that sit on them and pester them. And occasionally the ticks can be so bad they cause an infection. And I've seen it a few times on the tails of giraffe. And the tips of the tails end up falling off. In other instances, or you could have lions trying to hunt a giraffe, maybe when they're a little bit younger. Look at that beautiful giraffe. Wow. And occasionally lions try and hunt giraffe and might grab a tail and pull off a piece. But I think in this case it's possibly due to the ticks. You can see clearly again that this is an older giraffe. It's got a lot of calcification on the head. Can you see those lumps or knobs around the head? That's from also a good sign of age. Calcification builds up around the skull of the giraffe. Zoe from Australia has asked us, how big is a giraffe compared to an elephant? So Zoe, an elephant can get to about... Joey from Australia. Joey asked how big a giraffe is compared to an elephant. Now, height-wise, a giraffe is much taller. A giraffe will get to about 6 meters, and I'm almost certain that this big male is about that size. Whereas an elephant, a big male elephant, will probably get to about, I'd say 3 meters, 3 to maybe a really big male 4 meters, but on average 2 to 3 meters tall. He's just hiding in the bushes. Well, that was a really great surprise. Let's carry on looking for our lions. We're not too far from the area that I think they're in, so let's keep a lookout. But really great to see this big male giraffe walk past us. There he goes. Fantastic. All right, let's keep a lookout for these lions and see what they have got for us. Very excited about this. I think we're in for a treat. Some buffalo dung around this area too. Naomi from Pretoria has seen me touching the side of the steering wheel or the indicator and asked if I'm using my indicator. I'm not. It is a habit, Naomi. I've put my hand on there a few times and thought, wait, I don't need to use it. No, so I don't use it in the bush. We don't have to. But it's pure habits. It's from driving vehicles in the cities and so on. And it just... I don't know why I did it. Brian's having a good chuckle at me now too. I'm just scanning this area very carefully now, looking to see if we can find these lions. Don't want to miss anything. Oh, the sun is starting to warm us up quite nicely now. Okay, still having a good look. It's nice and open around this area, so we should be able to spot these lions easily, unless they've moved off into the thicker bush. But don't worry, I can see there's been a bit of activity on the road. Looks like some running, and I do see 1 or 2 lion tracks still heading in this direction. Let's have a look. Come on, where are these lions hiding? It's always exciting. You kind of sit on the edge of your seat now. You know something's around. You're just not sure where it is. Oh, there we go, there we go. Fantastic. And they are feeding on something, yes. Okay, let me just get the vehicle in there quickly for us. Looks like 2 lionesses. There we go. Wow, they're feeding. Oh, they're feeding on a young buffalo. And remember I said we actually had buffalo tracks back there. These look like these 2 lionesses that we bumped into last night on our way back to camp. I'm not too sure, but I think this might be 2 lionesses from the Nkuhuma pride. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Oh, this is incredible. Now, watch closely while this lioness is feeding. Just something I'd like to point out, which is very interesting. See how she's chewing with the side of her mouth. And she's tearing away at that meat. Now, lions and other big cats have something that is known as a carnassial shear. What that is the teeth in the back of the mouth, the molars and the premolars. Can see she's chewing there again using those teeth. They are slightly sharpened. They end in a sharpened edge and they overlap each other, almost like a scissor motion. And at the back of the jaw, that is obviously where all the very powerful muscles are in the jaw. And they prefer chewing and tearing with those teeth. So that scissor motion with those very sharp teeth and the power allows them to tear and break the meat down very easily. So that is the carnassial shear. They will still use the front teeth to tear open carcasses, but have a look. You see she's chewing with the side of her mouth there. And the other side. Very interesting to see. Looks like the other lioness has eaten her full. There, Brian's focusing on her now. Look at that belly. That is a full stomach. Lions will gorge themselves on meat. They'll eat as much as they possibly can until they cannot feed anymore. They will then go lie down and rest, just like this lioness is doing. And a little bit later, she'll probably get up and feed again. And they will constantly do that until there's nothing left of that kill. Once they've eaten everything or all the really good meat and there's not much left for them to feed on, they'll move off. And you might get other scavengers coming in, like hyena or potentially vultures, although this is a little covered and it's not a really large kill, so I don't think you would get a lot of vulture activity here, but you will get hyena and probably a few jackal coming and scavenging off of the remains. Just shows you how far these lions can travel. I mean, where we saw them last night, it was right on the other side of the camp, north of here. We're kind of in the southern side of Djuma at the moment, and southwestern side, and they've travelled good 4 kilometers, 5 kilometers, but they can cover a large distance in the evenings especially, and that goes back to what I was saying earlier. You know, we don't really know how far these animals can travel, only from what we track and find in the morning, but in one evening they can cover huge distances, very active, and especially they will try and hunt under the cover of darkness. Lions are also ambush predators, so they try to use the evening to their advantage and sneak up on prey and stalk and hunt. And these lions have been successful. Oh, you can hear the bones crunching. Again, just those powerful jaws and those teeth crunching through some of the softer bones. Just trying to have a so this is definitely a young buffalo calf. So James was looking for Karula. Why don't you cross over to him and see if you've got any updates on that, and we will sit with the lions.
Now, hello everybody. That is rather wonderful that you've been watching two lionesses having their breakfast. Obviously a very bad day for the buffalo calf. We've come down very far to the south now. We're actually not far from where you were watching the lioness with Byron, and hoping to find tracks of Karula and her cubs. Now, there were reports of them coming onto the reserve. Lex has driven this area and he says he can't find any tracks, and if Lex can't find tracks, I'm deeply suspicious of my ability to find them. So I wonder if somebody hasn't made a mistake. So we're just going to turn on to the southern boundary here. This is of course where we last saw little Sindile yesterday. Maybe he'll pop back and see if I can't find something here. Then if you're wondering about the Birmingham boys, there are 3 of them now on Buffelshoek. They are eating also a buffalo, and they are with 3 lionesses, probably that we think of the Torchwood Pride. Now, I have never seen the Torchwood Pride, and their existence is something of a mystery to me, given that they're supposed to live on Torchwood, but that's basically in Nkuhuma Pride territory. Now, we'll keep an eye out on the road here very carefully. People would have driven up and down here. So if I don't look you in the eye while I'm waffling away, it's not because I'm being rude. Sandy, very nice question. You were saying you're wondering if the wild dogs have come back into the area. Sandy, they did. They came back onto Vuyatela or Djuma for about 5 minutes, and then they went north into Buffelshoek, and then north from there into the Manyeleti. So they hung around for precisely 5 or 10 minutes, which was obviously deeply irksome to us, but they're not around here anymore. I think they'll come back. I suspect it was a dispersal pack, simply because I'm pretty sure that the packs, the settled packs, will have given birth and denned now, and for them to be ranging that far, unless that maybe they've got a den in the Manyeleti and they just came down here for a sort of hunting foray, it's quite a long way for them to come. So maybe they're a dispersal pack. Hello, Alan. Very nice question from you. You say, why have you not seen any rhino? You're a new viewer. It's lovely to have you with us, Alan, and thank you for giving us of your time and especially for talking to us. Alan, we don't see rhino because we don't show you rhino, and it is because of poaching. The chances of a poacher ever watching the show, pinpointing where we had seen the rhino and then coming in here or being able to get in here and then wreak havoc is obviously very remote. But at the same time, we just don't want to, if there is a remote possibility of it, we don't want to have anything to do with it, and so that's why we don't show rhino. We do see them from time to time, but I definitely see them far less frequently than I used to in this particular area, and so yeah, that's the story with the rhino. They are around though. In fact, Dave and I saw one just a little bit earlier. But unfortunately, we won't show them. Hopefully that will change one day and we will be able to see them, because they're such special creatures. They really are the most wonderful animals. I'm just keeping an eye on the radio. Alright, let's head back to Byron and the Lions. I'll try and figure out what's going on with these tracks here.
James hasn't had any luck yet with Karula, but as I always say, it's too soon to panic. We're still sitting with these two lionesses. I just heard a sound in the distance, and this lioness also picked up her head and noticed that. Sounded almost like a buffalo. Don't hear anything again. So Kathy from Tennessee has asked us if these lions would eat the skin of the buffalo. And Kathy, generally they try not to eat too much of the skin, but they will. It's inevitable while they're feeding to feed on some of the skin. As you can see, while that lioness is feeding, she's trying to get more closer into the meat underneath the skin, and she's tearing a lot of the skin away. But they will still feed on bits and pieces of the skin. That's often why lion dung has got a lot of hair in it. You can see it if you do find fresh lion dung. There will be a lot of hair in it, and that's from the skin of animals, from the fur. We're just going to have to wipe our lens again. Again, it's misting up a little bit as the morning starts warming up. You start getting just a little bit of condensation. Is that correct, Brian? So Alice from Oregon has asked us if lions... Let's just see what this lioness does. Just changing position. Alice from Oregon asked us if lions only grow one set of teeth. Alice, I'm not too sure when they are younger if a new set grows in. I'm not too sure. I'll have to double check that, or if somebody else has got any idea when they're younger if they do grow new teeth. But I've definitely seen in adults, when adults break their teeth, they don't regrow. The teeth do not grow back. So in adults, once the teeth are broken, or especially those canines, those incisors, then they don't grow back. So it is just the one set. See that jaw working and those sharp teeth at the back of the mouth, cutting that meat. See how she's licking the kill? That's interesting. Now, one of the reasons why she would be licking a kill, the lion tongue is incredibly rough, very, very rough. They've got little, almost like barbs, very sharp little hairs on on the tongue, and it's incredibly rough. It's almost like sandpaper. You can imagine with each lick, she's actually loosening some of the hair and also opening that carcass even more just by licking it. I mean, look how the fur is sticking to her tongue as she licks it. Wonderful to sit and watch them feeding and kind of trying to understand more about the way the lions feed, how they eat. Very interesting. Brian and I are warming up really nicely in the sun at the moment. The temperature has increased quite a bit from this morning. And it is beautiful, very peaceful morning. Clear blue sky, warm sun. And even though we're sitting watching lions, as I said, it's so peaceful, very calm, soothing.